Good morning, everyone. It's super nice to be here. My name is Gabby Dizon, co-founder of Alto, and I come to blockchain from 15 years of game development. Most recently, running a mobile game company in the Philippines called Altitude Games. And last year, we started on a research project in the Philippines. So we heard about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin a few years ago, but in the Philippines, it was mostly used for remittance because we're an emerging market. There's a lot of remittances. And I really didn't think that much about it until last year when we started playing with Ethereum and started asking all of the stupid questions. What are smart contracts? What is immutability? What is fungibility and non-fungibility? I've never really heard of these terms until before. And yeah, we started on a research project on Ethereum and what it could mean for games. So we started doing a lot of research on different things. For example, cryptocurrency as payment, what is a DApp, and how does it grow? And it wasn't until I read this article on Medium talking about start with the assets first in blockchain, that it really hit on us that the magical thing about blockchain as it relates to games was the ability to tokenize the assets, items, characters inside the game. And we started to make a game, then we encountered a lot of these difficulties in making a game. There was just really no ecosystem around it yet, in the same way there's an ecosystem in the greater game development scene. And that's how we kind of spun off Alto as a separate company from Altitude Games. And we wanted to make the platform that makes it easy for game developers to create blockchain-based games. Okay, show of hands, who has watched Ready Player One? For those who haven't, please do me a favor and watch it after the end of this conference. So Ready Player One talks about the concept of the oasis, or in science fiction, broadly known as the Metaverse. The Metaverse is defined as the sum of all gaming worlds added up to one coherent world that people can enter and go into and play. And why do people play games in the first place? They play games so that they can escape to different worlds, they can play out their fantasies, they can play and work with people they've never seen in their lives. And the concept of metaverse has been in science fiction for the last few decades. And on the first layer, the internet made it possible, but it wasn't recently that blockchain emerged, that the underlying protocol to make a multiverse happen is now available in games as well. It's still very early, but we're starting to see this in the events of the last few years. Okay, so let's talk about games back in my day. When I was playing role-playing games 20 years ago, all of the role-playing games had their items stored in files, and they were obfuscated as hex codes so that people couldn't easily edit anything. But of course, people figured out that if you could open a file, edit the hex code, you could very easily be the strongest player in the game. And then multiplayer games started happening, and then this wasn't cool anymore because we needed to find a way to kind of have a record of the economy in the game. So that's when databases started infiltrating games. And now you routinely have World of Warcraft, which has massive databases, hundreds of thousands, millions of players, lots of daily active users. And rarely do we think about the underlying technology that makes this happen. A lot of people ask, why put blockchain in games, and why does it make a game more fun? Aren't games fun already? Will blockchain games make it more fun? And what I tell them is that blockchain will enable new kinds of interactions that weren't possible before. Just like going from items that are inside of files, then going to a database allows for an MMO. If you have blockchain-based games, now you can enable the multiverse and have people traversing across worlds, and that's really powerful. Okay, so let's talk about item economies in currency. A lot of the time, game developers try to devise really clever economies in their world, only to have players come in and entirely wreck that economy. So a good example of this is World of Warcraft, where people come in, you have rarity of items, you have gold, and then people like Chinese farmers come in and then farm 24/7. They have automated bots, massively inflate the economy, and now the gold economy is completely wrecked. And fast forward 10, 15 years later, gold is worth almost nothing. So you've seen game developers kind of attune to this economy and actually seek out what is valuable. So this slide is from Diablo 2. It's the Stone of Jordan. And for those that played Diablo 2, you remember that this was the currency of the day. It wasn't the gold because it was inflated as well. It was massively cheated and duplicated. People looked for something valuable, scarce, and tradable. And if those things mean something to you, if it rings a bell, these are the things that we look for in items we're trading, and this is what we're looking for in crypto assets. Okay, so fast forward to today's business model. As I said earlier, I've been running a game company called Altitude Games for the last 4 years. And we're not a large company. We're around 30 people, 3 teams. We don't have our own publishing or user acquisition department. And as a small to medium independent game developer, it's actually very hard making a living in game development these days. So the minimum bar for your game is that it has to be fun. Of course, it has to be fun. But having a fun game isn't enough for you to make money in the game industry nowadays, especially in free-to-play mobile games. So you have to have your metrics down. You have to know what your retention is, DAU, conversion rates. You need to have user acquisition because the platform features aren't what they used to be. And there's just a lot going on aside from the actual game development for you to take care of to have a sustainable living in games. And if you've heard of 80-20, the Pareto principle, Sensor Tower says it's actually a lot worse. So in premium game development, 1% of publishers make 94% of the money, while the rest of us, they split the remaining 6%. So this isn't a great thing unless you're part of that 1%, of course. But I think it stifles innovation. It prevents new kinds of gameplay from emerging. And you're seeing, I would say, just very similar kinds of games being made because of the formula of how to make a lot of money in games in this dominant business model. So this is what brought us to blockchain in the first place. We were looking for ways to give creators and to give players a way to take control back of their monetization and just have more direct control of it without necessarily having to work with a publisher or investors. So fortunately, late last year, the ERC 721 standard, non-fungible tokens, came out. It became massively popular because of CryptoKitties. And now there's a way to separate the games from the items. You can take the space out from the invaders, shut down the game, have the invaders go out to another game, and that's the promise of blockchain games. So at Alto, we always talk about the item-first economy, where the items themselves are the platform. So what exactly does that mean? First, items are verifiably valuable and scarce. Of course, you already have a lot of games that have item scarcity and value. But what the blockchain does is it puts it on a ledger for all to see so that you can verify the value and scarcity, which allows it to traverse between different game worlds that may not necessarily know or trust each other. Second one is real ownership about game items. We've debated in the blockchain circles about how important this is. And I think for the players, what this means is that when I buy this item, I don't have any artificial restrictions on what I can do with it. I can sell it, I can destroy it, I can turn it into another item, and all without being bound to terms of service from a game that may yank the item away from me at any time. Third is playable in other games. I think this one is still developing. The interoperability across different games is something I see a lot of pushback about in traditional game developers. And I think we'll slowly see some examples of these emerge. We did a contest where we put up blockchain game items in a store and then have different developers make games that use the same items. For us, it was a grand experiment to see what interoperability would bring us. And I think this is what we need to do a lot of experiments. Don't try to make that Clash of Clans yet, because this scene is still very early and the use cases are emerging. And these unique interactions that bring fun to the players where it wasn't possible before putting items in the blockchain, I think a lot of these have still yet to be discovered. Okay, so this one example we like to give. Imagine a player playing their favorite platformer. Someone brings their crypto zombies in. Another player brings their crypto kitties in. And they're playing on one persistent game world. You shut this game down. Players say, oh, I'd like to play another game. Oh, let's bring the same items in. One player brings their same crypto kitty, another brings the crypto zombie, and now these items are now interoperable. They may do different things in different games, but you own the same underlying token, and you can bring this to different games with you, where these items do their thing in the context of each game. Okay, so just a quick word about what we're doing, Alto. So we provide tools for game developers so that they can easily mint, use, and sell. And let me talk about this for a little bit. So minting is the Alto Forge. A lot of the people here are early adopters. We want to bring blockchain to the rest of the game developers that may or may not really think about blockchain that much, but they want the benefits of blockchain. So for Forge, it's a way for game developers to easily drag and drop, say the name of the token that they're creating, state a number, add some metadata, pay a fee, and then the items are minted on the blockchain. Backpack is a wallet for game items that is independent of any one game. So as a platform, we believe that the item experience, the wallet experience is independent of the game itself. The game can sign transactions with a backpack, but it functions primarily as your inventory as a player, your inventory of items that you can take along with you as you traverse the oasis. So you can see who your friends are who also have crypto items. So you have pseudonymous identity. You can see what items your friends own. You can see what games they're playable in. So now this becomes a way of discovery for games that use blockchain items because of the backpack. And thirdly, for the wizard, we want to give game developers a way to easily sell items that they create using the Forge. So we want to enable what we call the initial item offering. Right now, a lot of game developers are doing their own pre-sales. Our view is that in the future, this will be managed more by platforms rather than having game developers do it on their own. Because a lot of what game developers want to do is to just make the great content and have the rest be kind of managed by an entity that thinks about that all day and see how they can manage that best. So the things that we're doing are maybe not for the early adopters, because the early adopters are deep down in Solidity already, knowing a lot about blockchain. But we want to bridge the gap to the rest of the game development community in the same way that Unity did for game engines 6-7 years ago. Okay, so we do have a token. There's a lot of skepticism around tokens right now and ICOs. And apart from a medium of exchange, which on the storefronts, for example, you can use it, the innovative thing that we're doing is gamers can stake Alto in the backpack wallet for free item airdrops. So we think about this as a huge user acquisition business that's not possible before. Instead of paying money to Apple and Google and Facebook to acquire your users, what you can do is create items, mint them, and airdrop them to your user base. People who will buy Alto token, we hope, are not buying it for speculation. It's because they want to receive your cool items that they can then use to play blockchain-enabled games. So I think this presents a closer bond between a game developer and their community. Click-through rates in ads are very low, and a lot of people see it as an annoyance. But receiving game items and having this token that tells game developers, hey, I want to receive free shit, give it to me because I'll most likely play your game. So this is how we want our token to be used. And we have a lot of friends that are creating their own blockchain games. They want interoperability. They want users. We want to work with a lot of these game developers to bring their items and to draw users to their games. Okay, so that's everything that we're doing. And we want you to help us build the oasis or the metaverse. We can't do it alone. And not only do we not want to do it alone, I think a lot of people have to come together. Most of us in this room have the same overarching vision, have the same goals. And if we can help each other develop on open protocols, common standards, and drawing more users into the universe, then we will all win. Thank you very much.